everybody. You can see. There we go. That works mostly. Eli, say hi.
Hello. I am making soundtrack happen.
There we go. All right. Ooh, what's this? Is it just elastic? Is it just elastic?
Yeah. These were on camera, were they?
No, I moved them.
Yeah, cool.
That's yours. Do you need these?
Nope.
Okay. Really good thing.
Hey, folks, say hi in chat if you're there.
As always, I am in the chat and watching it. So if you see us posting in there, then it's me. All right, I needed clippers. Didn't we get another pair of those heavy clippers?
No, we did not. But there are certainly a bazillion light clippers in the thread snips drawer in the tiny drawers that used to be samples. Ish. Yeah. You can also just use scissors. They're scissors. I know. I know.
And also the chips have kind of worn out of it. Sorry, where are the other numbers?
Tiny drawers.
Yeah.
To your right. To your right. Further right. The ones that used to be
here.
samples.
Okay.
Upper right. Hello. How are you doing? That's right, new room or old room. This is our studio. We are back in our studio space with the actual sunlight coming in from all the windows behind me and the actual table space coming in from all of that cork table.
Do we need to move this back?
Yeah, we can do that.
No, I mean the camera.
Well, we can't do that without moving the table, unless you want to.
No, I need to be here. So what I'm saying is, do we need to put something on this side of the table to put the camera on?
Yeah, I can do that.
Well, the camera, the laptop.
Same diff.
This is a very wide table. Anyway, we made an order to our local. There we go. That's better. Discount fabric dude over in Claremont, New Hampshire, Frank's, and he has like lots of 100 yards of cotton just ready to send out to people. This is only 4 of the like dozen 20 different patterns.
Yeah, we
that
got
he
5
sent
yard
us.
blocks.
Yeah. So we've got like these cool honeycombs and some random plaids and a bunch of houndstooth that we didn't see when we were there.
I think you need to close up on that.
Yeah,
because I don't think
probably.
the camera can see the houndstooth from that distance.
There we go.
It's extremely good, and there's like 20 colors of it.
Yeah.
And now we just have patterned cotton for days. Well, hopefully for weeks.
Yeah, we definitely would have. I mean, I like houndstooth, so I would have like thrown in a couple yards of that when we went shopping if I'd seen it before. But I didn't. I don't know where it was hiding.
So you're going to be cutting fabric today?
Yes.
Cool. I am going to be actually working on binders and sports bras for a hot minute because it's Saturday and they've been waiting real patiently for a while. So I will be over here on Magnus the sewing machine, and sometimes over there on GLaDOS, and sometimes popping my head in. Hi, folks.
Well, we could move the camera so that you could be seen better.
Yeah, let's. Well, how though?
Don't know. Well, anyway, we said we were going to be talking about nostalgic television today. And this mostly came out as we were looking for something like silly and inconsequential to watch earlier on in the week. And we have a Roku smart TV, and one of the channels is VRV, which I guess is it's a Nickelodeon Crunchyroll something or other. I
It's
don't know.
kind of like a leftover / cast-offs channel, because the reason that we have it is that it had the Maboom Bam TV show, the very
Oh,
short-lived
that's right.
My Brother and Me live show, which had 6 episodes, and now they won't talk about it except to say that the experience of working with TV producers was terrible. It's like, okay, who hurt you, and can we yell at them? But anyways, their show is still available on VRV, which is a streaming channel with like cast-offs and leftover shows.
Yeah, it does have like a live Nickelodeon function, like, watch Nickelodeon as if it were the 90s and you're watching cable and you have cable. But so what we happened across was the entire 4 seasons of Are You Afraid of the Dark from ye olden Nickelodeon days. But the problem was that you were only able to watch the first episode for free. And we didn't realize that until we had gotten through the first episode and it refused to start up the next one. Which is sad because I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark as a kid. I was telling Eli, that was like, they made such a huge deal about that premiere back in the day that it was like the first thing that I really made a point to like go and watch. And I very distinctly remember watching it with my older brother, and he got really freaked out by it, and I was just in love. It was the episode with the cab driver and the very first appearance of Dr. Vink with the va.
I watched maybe 1 episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark as a child, and it would have been a random thing that just aired somewhere. So I was not super familiar with the show, but it's got that earnestness to it. It's pre-cynicism, which is nice in television.
Yeah, it was like the early-ish 90s.
Yeah.
And, most of them were pretty cheesy, but some of them were genuinely good ghost stories. Like I was telling Eli about the prom queen episode, which is allegedly the inspiration for The Sixth Sense. And
By allegedly, do you mean by whom?
There's a rumor
Okay.
that this was that was the inspiration for The Sixth Sense was M. Night Shyamalan watching that episode, because it reads like a ghost story that you would hear in any town, right?
There's like man hook hand car door. It's that kind of ubiquitous ghost story.
Yeah, like there's a graveyard, right? And there's this girl who appears there during a week, I think, during a certain time of year, probably spring, because that's prom season.
Right.
And she would just appear at the graveyard in this prom dress, and she would be waiting for her prom ride.
Wait a second.
What?
No, keep going.
She'd be waiting for her ride. And of course, she doesn't know that she's dead. And the kid who meets her at first doesn't know that she's dead. But the whole wrap up of this story is that she is forever waiting for her ride to prom because her date ended up accidentally driving off a bridge in town before he picked her up. And so they had to like fix that somehow. I don't remember how.
I've heard this story.
Uh-huh.
It was part of an anti-drunk driving PSA that was given in my town before every fall at homecoming.
What?
Yes, this was the ghost story that was the anti-drunk driving ghost stories. Like, don't drive drunk.
Though it was a Nickelodeon show.
He was drunk in the version that I heard. It was don't drive drunk or you will murder your girlfriend and she will haunt the cemetery ever after. Like, seriously, not kidding.
Oh yeah, she might have gotten hit by a drunk driver or something while she was waiting for him. I don't remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
but it was a really good episode.
It was an anti-drunk driving PSA for teenagers.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
See, the high school in my hometown that I didn't actually go to because I went to Catholic school. The high school in my hometown just took a horribly wrecked car and just dumped it in front of the high school with a sign that said "Don't drink and drive."
That never happened in my high school, but I don't think wrecked cars were like a particular deterrent.
Oh.
It was a sign of status, I recall, for one particular guy in the trumpet section of the marching band that he was on his third car.
What?
Having totaled the first two, and his parents kept buying him cars. And so it was, of course, a sign of how rich he was, but also just a sign of how, I don't know. I guess I don't want to say brave, but like there's this some combination of like people would say that admiringly because he had survived his first two wrecks and wrecked cars and still drove and didn't give a fuck.
Oh, this sounds very dark for a kid show. It was. I mean, it was on SNCC. So SNCC was their like primetime Saturday night block that was geared more towards older kids. So it could get a little dark. And sometimes it was just about a clown from a carnival funhouse haunting you because you stole his nose. Or sometimes there was a toy factory on the 13th floor of an apartment building that was run by aliens.
Did Are You Afraid of the Dark team up with Goosebumps to like make clowns scary before Stephen King?
No, because it came out in like the 80s or the 70s.
Okay, so they were writing on it to make clowns scary for those of us who didn't see it.
I mean, clowns became scary because of that, serial killer.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep forgetting that was a real thing because it keeps coming up in the context of all this fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, Texas and New Jersey have very different driving cultures, I think. But yeah, we ended up not being able to watch the rest of Are You Afraid of the Dark? So instead, because Eli has a thing for time travel stories, I remembered this other show that, like, it's nobody, like, at least people remember Are You Afraid of the Dark, even if they don't necessarily remember, like, the episodes. Like, I can talk to people about Are You Afraid of the Dark, even if they don't remember Zebo the Clown specifically. But back when Nickelodeon was just airing other countries' TV shows, back before they had the money to like do their own programming, in the era of You Can't Do That on Television, which is the most famous example.
Wait, that wasn't a Native Nick show?
No, that was a Canadian television show.
What?
Yeah. And Nickelodeon sort of appropriated the slime thing as their identity, as their brand.
Yeah, I guess that's why I always assumed. We had a next door neighbor who I've told you about, a pair of next door neighbors, a married couple and their kid who was my older brother's age.
Uh-huh.
And the married couple is still a physicist and a marine archaeologist.
Uh-huh.
And us three kids used to tell the physicist dad about You Can't Do That on television. And we would excitedly tell him what had happened. And he would always look at us deadpan and go, but you can't do that on television. And he thought it was hilarious. And we thought it hilarious.
It is
And that's
hilarious.
my fond memory of that show, is telling neighbor's dad about it.
But yeah,
Him
so
just
there
carrying the
were,
joke.
yeah, that was a Canadian show
Huh.
that they, yeah. This, I don't know how, but yeah, Nickelodeon appropriated the slime thing. But one of the other shows that they put on was this Australian show from like 1991 called The Girl from Tomorrow, which is this lovely, cheesy, like aggressively early 90s uh, show about this uh, girl from, she's like a 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl
Yeah, that
from the
range.
year 3000 who accidentally gets sent back to their 1992.
I had never seen 1990s Australian television before, and it's everything I wanted it to be. And also, Chris is right. I have an extreme weakness for time traveling shows in almost all forms. There are a few exceptions, and 90% of them involve Stephen Moffat, but almost all time traveling stories I'm pretty much going to enjoy.
But yeah, part of the drama is that she got sent back in time along with this uh, refugee from Mad Max.
From the year 2500, which in between 1992 and 3000, Earth apparently goes through a period of Mad Max, which is fine
Right,
because it's Australian.
So the girl from the future, her name is Alana, and her guardian, because they don't have parents in the future, I guess, they just raise children, you know, under the it takes a village
Theory, yeah.
Yeah. So her guardian is going back in time to the year, what do we say, 2500?
2500.
Yeah, 2500 to find out about the great calamity that happened. And
it was Mad Max.
Yeah. You know, she has to dress up like they would in that time so she wouldn't be like suspicious. And she comes out in like leather with like chunky braids. You know, things that went over my head as a child.
So, my recommendations for time travel stories. Okay, so I started as a kid of the Super Nintendo era, and so probably my first and like most formative time travel thing was a video game called Chrono Trigger, which is still to this day one of the best video games ever, which is really astounding for something that came out in the mid 90s. But its time travel narrative is extremely neat. It's a very good sort of introductory time travel, not introductory, but yeah, okay. It is accessible as an introductory time travel story, but it's also really satisfying for people who are used to time travel stories and they just want a time travel story to be a fix-it verse, which is one of the reasons I really like them. I also like watching reading fix-it fic. Hang on a moment. Let me nab a thing.
I would also recommend The Girl from Tomorrow.
Girl from Tomorrow is cute.
You can find it on YouTube. It's like a mini series and there's 2 seasons. It's very 90s.
Yeah. So time travel also to me has a huge component of the glitch in it, a glitch narrative, a narrative of there is a normal way to progress through the world from start to finish, point A to B on the timeline, and then you can sort of clip through a wall or duck into a corner the wrong way or backflip twice and play your bomb like an ocarina or whatever, and then you've glitched the game and you can time travel. And the best recent example of this is the Netflix series Russian Doll. Russian Doll is an incredible example of time travel as glitch, and I freaking love it. And it sort of hits me in all of the right ways for a time travel narrative, and it doesn't hurt that it was made by a bunch of women who all genuinely seem to like each other and like what they're doing. Like that just makes any show a million times better. Yeah, Russian Doll is an incredibly good time travel story. For nostalgia stuff, what are older time travel narratives that I really like?
Trying to remember.
Yeah,
Feels like there were a bunch.
there are a bunch. I mean, there's always like the displacement, the person out of time stories like Girl from Tomorrow or any sort of, oh, I'm from one time and then I am dropped in another time story is sort of a cousin to the isekai version of anime. Like Fushigi Yugi is the mysterious play, the anime, is a very time travel-y isekai because the main culture shock that the main character goes through is that she is in ancient China and she comes from modern Japan. And the fact that this ancient China is a fantastical other world where there is magic doesn't affect her so much as the fact that it doesn't have hamburgers handy. Like that's the important thing.
If there's one thing that Yuritase is good at, it's making a 14-year-old female character who is just really relatable.
True.
Well, there's always Inuyasha, speaking of anime.
Yeah, Inuyasha is once again, it's a time travel isekai. Like the fact that Kagome goes to a space with demons and magic is like a function of the time travel.
Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of Japanese media where before a certain time period, magic and demons still existed, and it was after that that they stopped existing or just went into hiding.
Yeah.
Depending on what show you're watching.
And how Japanese nationalist it is and Japanese exceptionalist it is on the theory that when the Westerners came, the magic died. Yeah. Time travel recommendations, though, as opposed to just time travel and anime narratives. Yeah, like my recs for time travel are also like, it depends on whether you are looking for, I have a time machine problem, or I had an accident and now I am out of the time and place that is familiar to me, or I had an accident and now I'm in a loop, or what was the other one? Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach time travel narratives, and I like pretty much all of them.
There's the Umbrella Academy.
There's the Umbrella Academy.
Not necessarily a nostalgia thing, but
yeah. But I do like how time travel is handled in the Umbrella Academy. It's the Umbrella Academy takes the extremely complex take that the future is changeable and is constantly changing. So every time a time traveler goes back in the past and hits something, the butterfly effect immediately takes place, and the next time traveler from the future is coming from a different future. And I do like that. I think that's really tricky to pull off well, because it's a lot of crap to keep track of in your writer's room. To be like, okay, this version of 5 is from timeline A, and this version of 5 is from timeline B, and this version of the handler is from timeline 2.6. And this future comes back and there's like, well, you made this happen, so now there's a counter time traveler working counter to you in a different butterfly effect way. And the way the Umbrella Academy decides to handle it is to say, it's also complicated. None of you viewers will ever understand. Just accept that it's complicated, and whatever we say goes. which is not my favorite. It works because of Five's character, but it's not my favorite way to approach the thing.
Umbrella Academy was good, but I felt like the time travel was a little incoherent.
Yeah. It feels purposely incoherent because in order to make what they wanted, their premise, coherent, they would need a book minimum. I also really like the Good Place version of time travel, the Jeremy Bearimy, which is to say, it's incoherent on purpose and in a very systematic way.
Uh-huh.
And what the Good Place does is they use time travel to serve the plot and in the story that they want to tell. And when the story that they want to tell makes time travel useful, they find a way to make time travel happen. And when it's not useful, they're like, well, it doesn't matter. They're all dead and in various forms of afterlife or something anyways. And I really do enjoy that they treat it as much of a plot device as
a joke.
As a joke. They're cheerful about it, whereas the Umbrella Academy wants you to take it deadly seriously and just accept that this deadly serious thing that will cause the apocalypse or not is something that you will also just never understand. And it's like,
There's also at least the first two Terminator movies. The first Terminator movie was fine, but Terminator 2 Judgment Day was definitely the best in the franchise, and every single subsequent Terminator movie has ruined the entire conceit of Judgment Day, which is why we don't watch them.
So I've only ever seen Terminator 2. Is it basically the Umbrella Academy idea that once you've changed the past, the future changes and a different time traveler from the future will come back and fight you?
So the first Terminator movie was John Connors not John Connors. Sarah? I forget what his name. No, well, yes, Sarah. Her son is John.
Okay.
It was the future revolutionaries.
Okay.
Leader at the time.
Okay.
Traveling back in time to protect the woman who would become the mother of their actual leader, the leader of the revolution, who was John Connors.
Okay.
And because the Terminators, the robots, Skynet's robots, had sent a Terminator back in time to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
In doing so, this dude became John Connor's father. So while he did manage to protect her long enough to have the child who would become their great leader, he also created their great leader.
So the Terminator story is more of a closed loop.
Not really, though.
He fulfilled his own prophecy.
Well, because here's the thing.
Purpose.
Judgment Day was the Skynet Terminators sending another Terminator back in time in order to kill John Connor.
Right.
So the revolutionaries sent back, they had reprogrammed the original Terminator from the first movie, who was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
And they sent him back to protect John Connor from the second Terminator.
Okay.
So obviously that wasn't going to be a satisfying movie, right? Because it's basically just the first movie, but with a second dude.
Okay. So
the main plot of the movie was Sarah Connors, John, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator destroying Skynet before it happened. And they did.
Okay. So
they found the scientist who was responsible, and they found the leftover scrap of Terminator from the first movie that was responsible. And the scientist was killed, not by them, but by the other Terminator. And they destroyed the bit of scrap left over, and then they also destroyed Arnold Schwarzenegger
Like you do.
because he was the bit of scrap that was left over.
Yeah.
And in theory, that saved the future.
Right. So the first movie is a closed loop, fulfill your own destiny thing, and then the second movie is a fix it fic.
Well, it wasn't. It was sort of a fix effect, but it was different. Like the entire conceit of the movie was you control your own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came back with the third movie and revealed that everything that they did didn't stop anything and was completely pointless, it ruined that whole message.
Time traveled on purpose, but something went wrong. Yeah, like the good. Yeah. Okay.
That one episode of Gravity Falls.
That one episode of Gravity Falls. Extremely good episode of Gravity Falls. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing about time travel narratives is that they need to know where they're going before they start. And when you make sequels to time travel narratives, you inevitably fuck it up.
Right. Especially if you're James.
Yeah. No, I mean the only exception to this is Doctor Who, and that's because Doctor Who has always started with the explicit declaration that they don't know where they're going, and that's fine.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is a journey. We are going on a journey. Come on a journey with us. That's Doctor Who, and it's fine. Time travel where you start time travel and something goes wrong, or where someone started time travel and then something went wrong and then someone else finds that later and tries to help. That's also very good. The narratives that jump to mind to me about that are like The Good Place, in that just because there's time travel in it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a time travel narrative, or narratives that make time travel a part of it, sort of as a surprise plot twist near the end, or other fun things. I think my favorite out of that is Undertale. Undertale is my favorite time travel story because Undertale is a story about saving your game and resetting and playing a video game in ways that are practical or practically applied within the plot. And the way that a video game's
Wait, no. They're halfway through Undertale.
Shit. I'm stopping. Okay. I have stopped. No more Undertale spoilers. I will just say that I love it. I love it so much.
Undertale is a game about calling you out.
It's true. And like the way that Undertale deals with time is very good. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Gosh, yeah, I do really like games that let you mess around with time. Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, an absolute classic. A very like simple, clean cut time travel narrative because it gives you two time periods to be in, and you can pop between one or the other, and you can affect one with the other a little bit in certain instances. Ocarina of Time was like a very simplified Chrono Trigger in that respect.
Isn't Majora's Mask also semi-time travel-ish?
Majora's Mask is time travel in the loop sense rather
Right.
than in the fixed time periods that you can go back and forth sense. Yes. Yeah, Majora's Mask is a loop. It's Russian Doll. It is a degrading loop to my understanding. I don't know. I haven't actually finished it. But that's what I think I know about it. Okay.
Yeah, I really like it, but I'm bad at video games, so it's taking me a while. That's fine.
I get it.
It's not about being good or bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes the story is just overwhelming. I haven't actually played it. I've just watched Eli play it.
Yeah, but you watched me play it all the way through. And you were with me when I started to really freak out about it.
Which was
Very
almost
early.
immediately.
Very, very early. Yeah, I started playing Undertale like, oh, this is a fun game. Oh, I love Earthbound. This is a very Earthbound callback kind of game. And then I killed Toriel and felt bad and reset. And didn't kill Toriel the second time. And then I started to freak out. Oh, God. Undertale's great. You know what else is a great, great time travel narrative in like the most incoherent, complicated, horrible way?
What?
Homestuck. Homestuck is like the worst of both worlds in between the Umbrella Academy and it's something that tries to explain crap to you, because Homestuck is a story that Homestuck desperately wants to make sense, and it expounds hundreds of thousands of words. It spends those words on trying to make sense. And it ends up at a point where the characters call it out and say, "This makes no sense, author. Why did you write 100,000 words that don't make sense to me?" And the author appears as an author avatar and goes, "I don't know. I had to. The villain made me." Like,
Why kill Toriel, and also how? Sorry, I thought you were done.
Yeah.
You can kill her. You know, if you enter into that, if you go into the game expecting it to play like any other game that has a fighting function.
Yeah. I killed Toriel because I thought I was in a video game and I thought I was going to die and I thought there was no other option. And I was wrong. As for the how, it was difficult.
There's also the Haunting on Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, Haunting of Hill House.
House on Haunted Hill? No, the Haunting of Hill House.
Haunting of Hill House is the TV series.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
it's, it was a novel, and then it was a movie, and then it was another movie, and now it's a series that is mostly related to the original novel, but it's very good and involves unexpected time travel.
Yeah, it is time travel it's the ghost story version of time travel, where the theory is that ghosts can step beyond the
not that they
linear
can, just that they do.
Yeah.
Like, that is just part of how they exist. They exist on all points of time. Yeah. Did we actually watch the end of that?
We did.
Okay. I mean, I did.
We did. It was pretty difficult for me to watch, just because I scare pretty easily.
We took our time with it.
Yeah, I definitely had to stop for like 6 months after the goddamn episode with the dude with the cane.
Was it that? No, it was it was when we found out who the lady with the neck was.
Yeah, but it was the dude with the cane that kept me from going back.
That's fair. He was creepy. Trying to think what other shows had time travel.
I mean,
also Power Rangers must have done it at some point.
Yeah, like the other great thing about time travel is that it makes just a great episode in an episodic show. It's like a beach episode. You get to go and do some fun stuff, and then at the end of it, it's different. And of course, the best example of this is the Justice League Unlimited cartoons season finale, in which they did time travel with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern. And the three of them encountered a mad scientist, I guess, a dude who had invented a time machine.
Mm-hmm.
And the villainous dude who invented the time machine sent them back into the Wild West, where they met Jonah Hex and his band of Texans. And that was just, it was probably one of the best Justice League Unlimited episodes, which is saying a lot. Yeah. Yes, it was, because even though it involves 3 of the core 7, they're definitely it's
They talk with
after
other people.
They talk with other people,
Yeah.
and it's after Shaira leaves and
Right.
yeah.
Well, for that matter, there's also the episode where they get turned into kids, which I would technically count just because they get turned back into their childhood selves, like personality and all.
Is de-aging time travel?
Well, because it's not just like, oh, they're adults in their childhood bodies. They get turned back into their literal childhood selves.
Yeah, it's a regression story. Yeah.
Or there's also the Teen Titans episode.
Which?
The one with the other rogue time traveler.
Oh yeah,
Where
where Starfire gets catapulted into the future.
Yeah.
Ah, quite enjoy that one, and not just because it's like one of the few times we get to see an animated Nightwing. We deserved more animated Nightwing.
At least you didn't have the mullet.
It's true, and at least he comes back in Young Justice now. Yeah, no.
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for Jason.
I know you are. We all are. And like Young Justice Outsiders has now promised us Jason.
They did.
They have absolutely promised us.
Which
Jason.
is why I'm going to hold them to that promise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm expecting this to come. Yeah, I'm expecting this whole Jason plotline to come to a close in season 4.
And I'm also expecting that to coincide with Tim Drake actually getting lines.
Poor Tim.
Tim appears in almost every damn episode of Young Justice Outsiders. And does he talk? No, he stands there.
It's because he's sad.
It's because he's conspiratoring. He's in the conspiracy. And that's all they have to do is like show Tim and be like, yes, Tim is also a sneaky asshole.
Also, that whole like 3 episodes after Dick almost died where he wasn't allowed to just sit down.
Uh-huh. Young Justice Outsiders is certainly scratching a lot of that we were left with in the late 90s, early 2000s from Batman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, and Teen Titans, when there was a Bat Family animated, but it wasn't, they kept not quite doing enough.
Well, they
did as much as they could.
We're talking about Batman the Animated Series and the New Adventures of Batman and Robin. Yeah. So part of the problem was that it started off with Paul Dini and Bruce Timm working on the show, and then Paul Dini left and Bruce Timm. Yeah. That whole time skip.
Oh.
And the change in artwork. Oh. And Barbara and Bruce suddenly dating.
Right, that's all Bruce Timm. That's why it's called the Timmverse.
Yeah, style. And Bruce is like 23 for some reason. Sure. Yeah, that was when Paul Dini left. And so at that point, there was this really dumb character embargo where certain characters weren't allowed to show up in other media because something, it would confuse the audience, which is part of why Robin in the Teen Titans cartoon never gets identified as Dick Grayson, like directly.
He's just Robin. Never mind that they make it explicit in other ways that he's Dick.
Right.
Including like the childhood memories of the acrobat.
Right. And his alternate dimension self being Nosyard Kid, which is Dick Grayson back. Couldn't afford to pay the voice actors. No, they have great voice actors. The guy who played Bruce Wayne, Kevin Conroy, has been like the silver standard for Batman's voice since that series.
Kevin Conroy is a wonderful human being and has been Batman in so many things. He is the voice of Batman, and also he's one of us.
Yeah.
He's fam.
Yeah, and Mark Hamill is the Joker.
Again, bar none. Like, I think the best Joker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the both of them have like played Batman and the Joker and other stuff
Yeah.
over the years. But so Dick Grayson, right? And I focus on him because he's one of my favorite characters. He has been one of my favorite characters since the Adam West series, the old 1966 Batman series that was re-airing in like the 90s. He was part of this embargo, and not only did it mean that they weren't allowed to identify him as Robin in the Teen Titans cartoon, he wasn't allowed to show up in the Justice League cartoon. Which is dumb because Dick Grayson has been identified at multiple points in the comics as sort of like the central socializing point of the entire superhero community.
And also, so much of the Justice League cartoon was about like socializing Batman. It was about other members of the Justice League being like, Batman, come play. Batman, be nicer. Batman, chill out for a damn second. And if they could have just, like, for a second, consulted his eldest son, like his main link to humanity about this.
Or like, you know, there were 2 episodes where one of the supers got to come onto the Batman show and like have a fun team up. And, you know, Tim and Superman are adorable and fun, but everybody knows that Dick Grayson is the biggest Superman fanboy, so it's not fair that Dick never got to meet him. That's all I'm saying.
I don't care whether it's fair or not. The Tim and Superman team up was the best thing.
They could have still done that and let Dick meet
Show up.
somebody outside of Gotham City.
And the second best thing, of course, was the Batgirl team up with Supergirl.
Yeah, right.
That was
the other one.
That was the other one. That was the other team up crossover episode, mid-series, other ones, and it was just delightful and gay.
Yeah, Batgirl.
Gay as hell.
Batgirl and Supergirl versus Harley and Ivy.
And Livewire? Yeah, Livewire from Metropolis.
The best version of socializing Batman is wholly musical Batman. You cannot convince me otherwise. We haven't actually watched it.
We gotta watch that.
Yeah.
Do you know where we can find that?
Isn't it Star Kid, the Harry Potter musical people?
Is it?
I think so.
Cool.
I'm sure we'll have an answer to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the exciting thing about the Batman the Animated Series continuity, right? Like, so one of the issues that they had was that they wanted the series to sort of reflect more of what was going on in the comics at the time, which Tim was Robin at the time. So okay, they started
Best
off
Robin.
They started off with Dick Grayson, but they gave him Tim's costume, his Robin costume.
That was weird.
And then they also gave him Tim's "I'm quitting being Robin" storyline. I mean, even though it was brief, you know. Well, yeah, it was. You told my girlfriend that I'm Robin without telling me. That was the whole thing.
Yeah, okay, I guess.
He quit being Robin very briefly because Bruce told Stephanie Brown behind his back that he was Robin. And it was it was more annoying because it was like, I've gone through all of this angst
to protect you.
Yeah, to protect you and not tell the people I care about that I'm Robin, and you just did this without even consulting me.
Like the entirety of the first Young Justice comics arc is Tim being like, no, I can't tell you who I am, sorry. And everyone else being like, but Robin, we love you. Did you pass me my seltzer?
Yes. So what happened with Dick was that, I mean, retroactively, they decided that this was like a build-up of him and Bruce just knocking heads over how they did things. But the straw that breaks the camel's back is Bruce telling Barbara the Bat secret, because Barbara at that point is Batgirl, but she doesn't know who Batman and Robin are.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't know their secret identity. So
Which
he
is
tells her without consulting Dick about this, and they're dating at that point. And it's also heavily aimed that he was going to propose to her that night. And then she's dating Bruce. Whatever.
we all pretend that there was never a timeline in which Batman dated Babs. Bruce dated Babs. That's just not a thing that happened.
Yes, it's Starkid. But yeah, so Dick goes off and has this whole thing where he's finding himself and traveling the world and not meeting anybody else outside of like that actually exists in the DC universe except for Two-Face. Because they can't do the plot where that they did in the comics where he goes to ask Clark for help. For advice.
Because he's not allowed to talk to Superman.
Because he's not allowed to talk to Superman.
Dick isn't allowed to talk to anyone. And whatever that character embargo was about, it was really about people not liking Dick Grayson, which is just silly.
Basically every decision that's been made at DC for the past like 10 years. But I'm not bitter.
I mean, it's not like Dan Didio didn't explicitly say that he would have killed Dick Grayson if the fandom would have let him.
He was going to.
He was gonna.
Anyway, so during this period of time where he's off like fighting bears and meditating under waterfalls, actually, but you know,
kind of action.
they bring in Tim because Tim is the current Robin in the comics, and they give him his new black and red costume.
And because they're skipping Jason because this is cartoons and this is television and we can't do the story of death in the family.
Because it would have been too much.
Yeah.
Like they didn't want to go into it. Like even this whole backstory about how Dick quit and came back as Nightwing and why he's Nightwing now and not Robin. That was all done in a flashback.
Yeah.
They just wanted things to be the way that they are in the comic right now, and they didn't want to deal with how things got there.
So let's jump ahead over several decades of comics.
So what's happening now is that Paul Dini is, and it's actually the first issue has been released. They're working on the Lost Years series kind of thing, a comic book series that fills in that whole gap.
Right.
About Jason and like slotting him into the universe.
I still don't know how they're gonna do that, but I'm excited for it.
I don't care how they do it. I just want it to happen. Like, I mean, I think the only real issue is like the Batman Beyond series. Like, because so much, because so much of that, you know, why Bruce quit why everybody else quit and why Bruce eventually ended up, you know, alone, and like how things down spiraled so awfully was centered around Tim.
Yeah.
And there was no real mention of any other horrible, tragic things happening.
Because they weren't doing Jason. Retconning Jason in is going to be a bit tricky.
Yeah.
Because not only have they already done this whole arc with Dick and Tim, they had also done Batman Beyond, which was 4 seasons of 60 years in the future, where they've
and a movie
where they've essentially filled in most of those gaps.
Yeah.
So now that they're trying to retcon in an extra Robin in the middle, I'm interested to see how they do it.
And it's Paul Dini.
Yeah, it's Paul Dini. I think it'll be interesting. Batman the Animated Series has a very heavy significance for the two of us because it's the reason that we met.
It is.
So I think we both trust Paul Dini in that sense. Like, he's not going to do anything like deliberately malicious. He's not going to do anything like
The
especially...
only thing that you have to worry about him doing is inserting Zatanna somewhere where she doesn't necessarily need to be.
And hooking up Babs and Bruce.
No, that was first him.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. God, I always forget that. Okay. I always forget which
Paul
one.
Dini is the one who
You're right.
is desperately in love with Zatanna. And
Right.
No, his OTP is definitely Bruce Zatanna.
I have a prediction now.
Uh-huh.
At the end of this series, Bruce is going to go to Zatanna and ask her to erase his memories of Jason.
Oh no.
And that's why Jason will not have impacted anything that comes after it.
Every time a TV show does a flash forward, they end up shooting themselves in the foot, and yet they keep doing it. This is true. But wait, I need to explain to you how much Paul Dini loves Zatanna. He loves Zatanna so much that he married a magician and had her voice Zatanna in the cartoon.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean the flash forward in the Batman cartoon wasn't like terrible. The only really weird thing about it was them de-aging Bruce to be in like his mid-20s, which would have made him like, because we've established like
he adopted Dick when Dick was 9.
He was it
Or 12?
varies between 8 and 12 depending on which backstory you're watching. They never say exactly which age Dick is. I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be 8 at the time. He could be 12, but either way, Bruce was like in middle school. If he was the age that they established him as.
You know what I really want? You know what I want more than anything out of like the next meta Batman story? Like every now and again, a good meta Batman story comes out, like Neil Gaiman's take, or something where it's like, this is not in the regular canon, but this is a story of Batman that is a commentary on the regular canon.
Uh-huh.
I want
That's
there to
not
be
from Frank Miller.
Exactly. Frank Miller's Batman is not a good meta Batman, but it is an example of one. So what I want is a meta Batman story that is a time travel narrative that justifies for us why Batman is perpetually between the ages of 30 and 45, and why Dick is perpetually adopted between the ages of 8 and 12, and yet they still keep adding younger siblings into this mix. I want a time travel story that resolves this. I want a weird set of stories where time in Gotham just keeps slipping, like 10 years or 15 years.
They did that sort of with the Captain Marvel family, with Fawcett City.
Did they?
Yeah, because the original run of the comics, the Shazam, they're called Shazam now.
Right.
Because people know Captain Marvel in the Marvel comics.
Right. Marvel Comics has finally reclaimed the Captain Marvel name.
Yeah. So the Shazam family, they exist in Fawcett City. And the original comics came out in like the 50s-ish. And they're very like what you would expect out of sort of a little pocket comic book written in the 50s that you would get in like a pack of bubblegum. They're just very cute and silly. Yeah, wholesome. His sidekick is a talking tiger, and he fights a super intelligent caterpillar, but so when they sort of rebooted the series in the 90s or early 2000s, they sort of kept that whole wholesome 50s Archie comics kind of feel. And as the characters inevitably had to spread out and join the greater DC Comics universe, because I think they were not originally a DC Comics property.
They were not.
they had to sort of explain why Fawcett City is the way it is. You know, why is this kid fighting Nazis? And why does nobody care that Billy is living in an apartment by himself, even though he's like 10? And this is just seen as like him being a rapscallion. And so the eventual explanation was that at some point, I think it might have been the wizard Shazam, who in the original series, and not, which is not the case now, he was still alive and around and was sort of acting as Billy's mentor. He created a time bubble around Fawcett City in like the 50s, and it just stayed like that.
You're describing the plot of that Justice League Unlimited, or that Justice League cartoon episode where they were in that post-nuclear wasteland that was psychically projected to be a time bubble of the 1950s.
Right, except that it wasn't it wasn't horrible.
Yeah.
I think he was protecting it from like Black Adam or something.
So
And that was the only way to protect them from him.
Yeah. So sidebar, we washed this. We hot water washed this.
Yes.
Look at your fingers.
Okay.
Sometimes dark cotton is over-dyed, and sometimes that means even after you wash it, it will still like leak a little bit of dye.
Especially black.
Especially black.
Yeah. We bought a ton of this really cool black fabric that had this sort of damask feather print on it. And we did not wash that before we made it into a skirt.
Yeah.
And I did not wash it before I wore it the first time.
Yeah.
And my hands were like blue by the end of the day.
Fabric gets over-dyed. It's like hair. Only some of the dye will soak into the fiber, and the rest of the dye sits on top until it's washed off.
Yeah, we watched the Shazam movie recently.
It was quite good.
It was very good.
I
love the Marvels.
I was startled at how much I loved the Shazam movie. I really expected it to be kind of a dumb comedy Sandler ass bullshit type thing.
And there was a little of that.
There was a little of that, but it turned out to have a lot more internal consistency and like purity of heart, wholesomeness than I was expecting. Like it turns out I can deal with Sandler ass comedy a lot better if the basic internal logic of it is not mean.
Yeah.
Like the worst thing about dumb comedy is that it's often so shitty to people.
Yeah. No, it was very sweet. And I was expecting to be a little more annoyed about the like very, very strong changes that they made to Freddy.
Yeah.
Who is in the comics, Freddy was like he was the popular kid at Billy's school. You know, they weren't really friends. Not because either of them were like mean, just because Freddy was the popular kid and Billy wasn't. And, you know, he was a jock. He was like the star of the baseball team. And what actually happened was that Billy, as Captain Marvel, was dating, was his name Captain Nazi? It was something very simple like that.
Sorry, wow.
It was something very straightforward like that. I'm pretty sure it was just Captain Nazi.
Sure.
But he was fighting him
Bubblegum comics.
Yeah, at this park where Freddy was fishing with his grandfather. And this was before Billy quite knew how to control his strength and how to like be aware of what's going on around him while he's fighting. And
Oh shit! Is this how Freddy breaks a leg, gets on crutches?
Yeah.
Or something? Yeah.
So Billy gets Captain Nazi by the leg and he spins him around and he flings him off towards the lake where Freddy and his grandfather are fishing.
Yeah.
And his grandfather is a survivor of World War II.
Oh boy.
So, this very deliberately, this was a
Yeah.
very deliberate extra layer of this. And Captain Nazi eventually turned into Freddy's arch nemesis.
Right.
But so their boat was hit by Captain Nazi being yeeted by Billy with his super Hercules strength.
Uh-huh.
And I believe his grandfather died. And yeah, his leg was broken such that it caused permanent damage.
Right, because this is a 1950s comic.
Yes.
So like, if your leg is broken, well.
And Billy felt so guilty about it, especially because Freddy was the star of the baseball team.
Right.
He ended up bestowing upon him some of his powers, and so he became Captain Marvel Jr.
Like you do.
Who was the inspiration for Elvis's 70s period with the bell bottoms and the cape. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
This is like on public record.
True fact. Elvis was a comics nerd.
70s Elvis was cosplaying Captain Marvel Jr. constantly. You ever read Thief of Time by Terry Pratchett? All sorts of time shenanigans that could explain Batman if you transplant the time travel logistics.
No, but it's on my list. Like that's one of those that has been recommended to me multiple times, and I do like Pratchett stuff. It's This is the sort of thing that I am leery to say on the internet, but Pratchett is not my favorite. He's fine.
I mean, you don't have to be into every single author out there.
Totally. But I do like his world building and his like the way that he builds a logic of a world. So I am really excited to see what he does with time travel, because time travel is, I do think, a time travel narrative is one of those things that really sort of exposes an author for what they want to do with the world. Like, if you are working with time travel, you have the power to tell. You have removed barriers to tell any kind of story you want. So what kind of story do you want to tell? Do you want to tell a story where things get better? Do you want to tell a story where things are really hard? Do you want to tell a story where a sexy self-insert author avatar travels through time and all of the girls swoon over him, Stephen Moffat? Or do you want to like
save JFK from being assassinated?
Right. This is definitely like the Save JFK one is,
which is Stephen King, by the way.
Yeah. It's like that's an extremely Stephen King's generation.
Oh yeah.
Fantasy.
And I've heard so many great things about that book from people from that generation. Yeah, this is the one that's just a date, and the date is the date that JFK was killed, and I don't remember it.
November 22nd, 1963.
There you go.
I'm from Texas. We have sort of like a specific cultural trauma around that because liberals in Texas are like, it happened in our state.
Uh-huh.
There's an undercurrent of we let it happen.
You know what happened in New Jersey?
What's that?
The shark attacks that inspired Jaws.
The beaches are gonna stay open.
No, I mean, they did stay open, but they also took a lot of precautions.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm just thinking about that fucking quarantine meme.
Yeah, no, I know. Zell Stone's extremely unsettled about me talking about Captain Marvel. It was. The thing about comics in the 50s to the 70s, sometimes some of them even into the 80s, they were very unsettled.
Yeah.
Anybody who doesn't think that Batman should be making jokes has only been reading Batman comics for the past 10 years.
Maybe 20. since 2000, late 90s. I'm gonna say Batman started grimdarking up in like the late 90s when Tim Drake started punking up.
It started, but I think he was still making jokes then.
Yeah, yeah,
He was at least still making jokes in the cartoons.
this is true.
Thief of Time isn't exactly time travel, sort of, but not precisely. Also, call Stephen Moffat out. We will call Stephen Moffat out all the time.
Every time. Like, I do think Stephen Moffat just tells on himself constantly.
Mm-hmm.
He betrays the kind of world that he wants to see
Mm-hmm.
in his stories, and it's really gross.
Night Watch is a much more straightforward time travel. It's also very good, but I think it won't be as impactful if you're not familiar with the earlier books about that character.
Night Watch is Sam Vimes in Ankh-Morpork, isn't it? I am familiar. The Pratchett that I've read was the one with the one where Carrot comes to town. God, it's been so long. But yeah, I'm vaguely familiar with Sam Vimes. Out of that cast, Vimes left enough of an impression on me that I think I can. I didn't know that he was in a time travel story, and now I'm gonna go read that story. Krista, can I show you and you also, I'm gonna show everybody the bias tape maker.
Yes.
I'm gonna show a new machine.
Hi, Emily. Yes, you missed sort of a Stephen Moffat call out. Men at Arms, I think, and if you like Vimes, definitely read Night Watch.
Yes, Men at Arms. That was the thing that I watched.
Yeah, I keep seeing that Dracula series on Netflix that in our recommended, and I keep getting initially excited and then remembering, oh, that's that Stephen Moffat series.
So, never mind Stephen Moffat for a minute. Let me show you a thing. A thing about which I'm very, very excited. Oh no! I dropped a thing. So, this freaking lunchbox looking machine, it's so small. And it is a bias tape maker. So, let me show you how it works, because it's the coolest thing. I stick that there and this here, and drop the pieces back in, and then I take a strip of fabric that's an appropriate size, in this case, 1.5 to 2 inches, and I pull the folding tip out. And then I need a pair of tweezers or something of that nature. Just shove it in. There's the thing. So I'm going to shove the strip of fabric into the folding tip. And like a piping tip for icing, it changes the shape of the thing as it comes out of it, because it folds the fabric over so that the two raw edges get folded under as it comes out. So I'm going to clip that piping tip into the machine. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to take the iron out, because this is an iron, by the way. There's a hot surface there and a hot surface there and 2 rollers. I'm going to place the fabric in. Hope you can see what I'm doing there. Place the fabric in so that it folds right. Turn the heat up to linen. It is heating up. And then once it's heated, I'm going to turn it on, and you will get to see what happens. The really cool thing about this machine is that it is literally like 3 working components. It's the folding tip, it's the hot iron, and it's the roller, the motorized roller. And the electronic parts are just the heating element and the rolling motor. And between those 2 things, it will make bias tape forever. And I have already made boxes and boxes with this. And as soon as the little ready light comes on, I'm going to show you. And it means that we can make bias tape out of all of these strips of spare fabric that Krista's been tearing off because the yardage of fabric doesn't exactly fit the mask pattern. So with this extra 2 inches or 5 inches, light went on.
bias tape?
So bias tape, very simply, is well, okay. There's the way that I'm using it, and then there's the actual technical definition. The way that I'm using it is to say, bias tape is a strip of fabric that is folded over so that the raw edges are folded towards the center, and then it's pressed so that those creases stay there.
This is a mass manufactured version.
It is often used to bind the raw edge of things like quilts and
Clothes.
yeah, or clothes, and very pertinent to the current moment. It makes super good mask ties because it binds the edge of the mask, and then you just wraps around your head and you tie it.
Emily says, "Go, little lunchbox, go."
Yes, that's really what it is. It is the tiniest machine that I have ever actually used successfully. I have had a small handheld sewing machine, but that thing did not work. This is the
It was
smallest.
like a little stapler.
Yeah, it was a tiny handheld stapler thing, and it didn't work. But this works beautifully.
Bless you. Bless you. Is there like an attachment or something that you could get to make like smaller bias tape like that?
Yes, and in fact, I have one.
Nice.
This is the tiny folding kit. You have to feed in a smaller strip.
Right.
The general rule is that you feed in a strip that is twice as big as the strip you want to get out, or
Right.
less. So this is the 1 inch, and I
Because
have
you
cut,
fold it in half.
right, more or less.
Well, that's what this is.
Yeah, I have not cut this to be precisely 2 inches because I find that it doesn't like it exact. It wants it just a little bit narrower than that. And if I wanted it to be super neat, I would press it first. But who's got time for that these days?
Also, it was a demonstration.
Yeah. And I also just really like the fact that we're going to be able to use all of our fabric scraps. Zero waste. I feel very strongly about zero waste stuff. It's really nice to not have to think about dumping fabric scraps, or who has a textile shredder, or is our textile recycling company even picking up right now. Don't have to think about it because we're using our scraps for things.
Emily is complimenting the nails. Thank you. They're sort of duochrome. I'm not sure if you can really see it, but it's sort of like a very subtle gold to green. So it sort of looks copper.
Would you grab the laptop stand?
Yes. I know you're in town. I don't remember the company name, but it's that company at Walgreens. Oh wait, it goes back here, right?
Yeah.
With the polar bear for a label. Polar bear on a label. On the label. I could talk. Are we done talking about comic books?
Yeah, I'm good with being done talking about comic books. Comic books are an energy expending subject.
So could you feed that into the smaller one and fold it in half?
I'm not sure. The thing about the smaller one is that it's a much narrower opening, and it doesn't take as many layers. You're welcome to give it a shot, but I think I have not had much success doing anything other than 3/4 of an inch wide strip in that, just because
Well, just because in theory,
messy.
bias tape is supposed to be folded like that.
Yeah, but I can do that in the stitching phase. It would be nice to crease it the other way too, but yet I do not have that. And also that tip will
yeah,
not
that's
do a
too
fold
narrow.
like that. It will only do,
Tri-corner.
yeah, I don't understand why this is called a single fold, because it's not. There are two kinds of folding tips. One of them will just take it flat and fold it lengthwise.
Uh-huh.
And the kind that I have here, both of these take the edges and fold them inward, like that.
There was an origami term for that.
Yeah, there is. But all I can think of is butt fold.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's when you bring the two raw edges of something together so that they butt up against each other. Also, it's funny, so that's why I remember it. I was very into origami for a very long time, and I mean that in the sense of not only did I fold 4,000 cranes before I was out of high school, I invented my first origami when I was 12. Like, I was deeply into it. You could not find me without a piece of paper in my hands for a while there. I've since come to realize that I managed to turn folding cranes into like my focus fidget. It was the thing that allowed me to stay focused during class. And once all of my teachers had figured out that it was not, in fact, distracting me, they let me do it, which was a huge privilege in retrospect.
My teachers would never have allowed that.
My teachers were also like extremely overloaded in a very overcrowded school, and the fact that my fidget was quiet and didn't bother anyone put me light years ahead of half of every classroom.
That's fair. Privileges of going to a small Catholic school where there were 50 kids in my class.
Yeah.
Well, in my grade, 25 kids in my class. It was very weird going to high school and there suddenly being more than 2 homerooms.
I think there were 8 homerooms in mine, maybe 10. I don't know. We didn't really keep count.
I don't remember how many there were in my high school either.
So happy about this.
I was always in the first one anyway because my last name started with C.
You know, I could take those strips and like sew them together, and then I wouldn't have to re-thread everything in. That's a thing that could happen. Technically, in like the most accurate sense of the term, bias tape is not cut in strips like this. It is cut on the bias. So instead of being, bless you, instead of being like the last 2 inches of a piece of yardage straight off, it would be deliberately cut across the fabric. And you do that so that it has more stretch and more internal coherency, less fray. But again, we're trying to minimize waste by using our leftovers. And as long as we fold it over and stitch it down, then all of the raw edges will be enclosed and battling fray anyways.
Hence the name. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Also, sorry, that was just allergies. I promise. I sneezed into my arm.
We keep getting super high pollen count alerts for this area, and both of us react to the pollen. And so every time a sneeze comes around, it's like, is it? Is it? And here's the other thing. We're ripping fabric. And every time you tear a piece of fabric, a small, fine spray of cotton dust expands into the air, which you can sometimes see in this studio with the sunlight coming in. Like we can literally see the cotton fibers turning into dust and little particles of that leftover fabric dye just in front of us, which is why we have, you probably can't see it from there, but we have an extra powerful air filter in this studio. We have a robotic vacuum that vacuums up the lint every night.
That's just me running my finger over my laptop a second ago.
Processing textiles creates lots of dust, and that creates lots of sneezes.
And this was just 4 yards of You should see me, like, I stay at home and just tear up yards and yards and yards of fabric. and I have to like wipe down my computer at the end of the day.
We found a deal on a Dyson vacuum, so we're finally going to have a really good home vacuum when it comes, and so we will be able to actually like vacuum up all of the fabric dust at home, which is it's really a health thing. Like the amount of dust that we produce processing cotton is stunning.
Would particulate masks help? Yes, they do.
Yes.
I do. I have ended up wearing my masks at home while I'm doing this. It doesn't help all the lint getting in my eyes, but it at least means I'm not breathing it.
Yeah.
Having fun.
I really am. Look at that. It's so pretty. This lovely hexagon pattern makes for really nice looking bias tape. I wonder if I can just like chain a piece of bias tape on. Like it's cotton, it clings to itself more or less.
Here, that's for you.
No thanks. What is it? Oh, it's my next mask. Correct.
Yes.
Nope. Come on, baby. Nope. Oh well. I tried.
I'm moving my pottery wheel into my apartment. I'm so worried about the dust accumulation. I don't blame you.
I bet.
If you can find an air filter, that'll probably help.
Yeah, for sure.
Like turn your glasses into goggles. Yeah, they're a little small though. Also, that is lovely bias tape.
Yeah, no, I'm super pleased with this. It's just going to not only make it much easier to do ties for all of these masks, which are more comfortable than around the ear elastics for a lot of people, just looks nice and also zero waste. Zero waste is good. Just using every bit of the yard is good. We have these leftover squares that are going to become kid-size masks. Feels good. Good.
Yeah, that's the other thing we've been rewatching is the Persona 4 anime, which is fun.
Yeah. It's not a time travel narrative, and it really doesn't need to be. Persona 4 is like this beautiful, complete piece of work that does a number of things very well and then completely fails its queer cast and its queer fandom in a ways that you're allowed to completely ignore if you want.
But it's also a nice way to consume Persona 4 if you're not really into video games.
Yeah.
Or if you're not into JRPGs specifically.
It is one of those anime made out of a video game that just does it straight up and does it very well. Like it just presents you the video game in anime form without missing anything, without leaving anything out, and without being boring about it. Which it helps, of course, that the video game, all of the good parts of the video game, a lot of the good parts of the video game are in cutscenes and in dialogue. So it was ripe for an anime version.
You still have to watch the Persona 5 anime.
God, I hope it makes it a little better. I'm sorry, Persona 5 was a disappointment.
It was still a good concept, and what was good about it was very good. Like I think the story and the character interactions were really good. And I think it will do better as an anime, if only because as a video game it was very cutscene heavy.
Yeah. A lot of Persona 5 that was very disappointing was
Bye, nigga.
Bye. A lot of Persona 5 that was so disappointing was that it kept pretending to offer you choices and then being like, here, you have free range of movement, except you can't leave your bedroom and you can't do anything but sleep. And every time you try to do something other than sleep, your cat tells you to go to sleep. Like, the amount of times it pretended that you had free reign and then you didn't was unbearable.
Well, also just all of the cutscenes.
All of the cutscenes. There were so many. There were so many, and they went for so long. And yeah, I hope the anime had like an editor take them down. So a lot of them were also like wildly unnecessary. That is one thing about Persona 4. It was very well edited.
Yeah.
Like every character interaction gave you something new. And there was very little like repeats of you didn't learn the same thing about a character twice. Which is great because each character who you could interact with had at minimum 10 different scenes that you could go through with them as you leveled up their social link.
Uh-huh. And also in Persona 4, you know, you were surprised by the villain.
Yeah. Persona 5 was like, look at this guy. He's probably going to be the villain. Oh, nope, he's teaming up with you. He probably is going to stab you in the back later. Oh, nope, he's still a cool character. Nope, he just stabbed you in the back. Aren't you surprised? Come on, guys. Come on. Persona 4 had a good twist. I genuinely did not see it coming, and most people I have spoken to about it who weren't spoiled for it did not see it coming. I don't know if you did.
I didn't. I in retrospect, I could have predicted it if I had pieced together, oh, this is a character with Johnny Young Bosch's evil voice. Like, no, I love Johnny Young Bosch. He's a great voice actor, but he definitely has a voice that he does when a character is going to be evil.
Yellow. You downstairs? I will be right out. Bye. So it is 4:30, and that was someone coming to pick up a set of masks. So I'm going to pop downstairs and drop them off.
Okay.
Or shall we call this a day?
Sure.
Alrighty. Thanks for coming out, y'all.
Yeah.
We'll see you next weekend.
Same time, same channel.
Maybe same place. We don't know.
Either here or at home. Yeah. It all depends on how paranoid I'm feeling. All right. Bye.
Bye.